Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to be taking a look at the self-described ambient puzzle game SquareCells, which was recently released on Steam a few days ago. Now this is a pretty straightforward game that's based on the idea of creating puzzles around two-dimensional grids, which appeals to me on a basic primal level, and for those of you who don't understand why, I have a link in the description box down below. But we're going to take a look at the first 6 or so puzzles from this game. Obviously, don't want to show too much of it, it being a puzzle game. I don't really want to spoil it for folks. But I think I can show these first few levels and kind of give you a basic idea of what the game's like and what the mechanics are without spoiling too much. So we're going to go ahead and jump in here, and as you can see, I believe there are about 36 or so levels in the game, but they do seem to get more complex as you go. So don't worry if the stuff you're going to see here at first seems a little easy. Hopefully by the end of this video you will understand why this could end up taking you some time. So let's go ahead and jump into the first one here and try to explain the mechanics of how this game works. So basically you have these numbered columns and rows, and the numbers around the columns and the rows signify the number of squares that are part of the pattern that you're trying to reveal that exist in said columns and rows. So in this case we have a 0 in this column, which means that all of these poor little squares have to die because they are not part of the pattern. Fortunately for their neighbors, they get to live because they are in fact all 4 part of the pattern. And then as you can see, we can use the column numbers, or sorry, the row numbers to determine that, okay, we have 1 in this row, so these other 2 can go. 1 in this row, so these other 2 can go. 1 in this row, so these other 2 can go. And 3 in this row, so these guys get to live as well. And there was much rejoicing. So, as you might imagine, that's a pretty simple, straightforward, basic mechanic, but things are going to get a little more spicy as we get further in here. So we're going to do one more of these based on what we've learned so far, and we can go ahead and mark this last row of 4, and, sorry, column. Rows and columns, they're hard, what can I say? This row of 4. And then what we can figure out is that because we already have the 1 marked in this row, these other 3 can go away, which means that the 3 in this row, oh, here we go, 1 in this first column, which is marked, so those little guys can go away. Which means the 3 in this row are these 3, which means the 2 in this row, this column, are these 2. The 2 in this column are these 2. Alright. Now, I know what you're thinking, that's all pretty simple and straightforward, but here's where things get interesting and or a little complex. So, it's actually possible to have more than one number for the same column or row, and what that signifies is that you're thinking of the column or row in terms of halves. So for example, this last column is a 2, 1, which means the top half of the column has 2 in it, the bottom half has 1. But the rule of the game, which actually the game doesn't do a great job of communicating this to you, so it took me a while to figure this out myself, is that the 1 can't touch the 2. So if you have a 2 and a 1 like this, it means that this 1 has to be this 1, and this is not a legit square. So similarly, on this side, on this row, you have 2 at the end of the row and 1 at the beginning, or the first half of the row. That it would have to be this one because they can't touch, and then that goes away. And then we can use some process of elimination. We know we need 1 from the second half of this row, so it has to be this one. We know we need 1 from the first half of this row, but it can't touch, so it has to be that one. And 1 and 2, so 2 down at the bottom, 1 at the top. The second one gets eliminated. You probably get the deal at this point. And that one goes away. And that one gets marked. And this one gets marked. So I think we just forgot to mark one here. There we go. All right, so let's do one more of these just to kind of drive this point home. So here we have this second row. The second half has 2 in it, so that would be these 2. The first half has 1, but it can't touch the second half, so that one gets eliminated. And then what we have here is the first half of this column has 1 in it, which has to be this one because it's the only one left in the first half of the column. And now you can see this row only has 1 number in it, which means there's only 1 square in the pattern in this row. And since we already have that marked, these other 3 can go away. And now what that does for us is it shows that the 3 that are in this column have to be these 3, which in turn lets us know that the 1 that's in the second half of this row has to be that one, which means we can eliminate that. Again, since this row has 1 in the first half of it and those 2 can't touch, this one goes away and this one is the one we want. And then because this column's second half only has 1 in it, we get rid of that, and that means these last 3 in this row are the 3. Alright, so here's where things get a little more spicy. So basically at a certain point they start introducing numbers on the squares themselves. And what these numbers symbolize is that the square is part of a group that is that number of squares. The other thing is the squares that are connected to each other to form the group can't be on a diagonal. So what you basically have here is a case where this 1 is in a group by itself, so it can't be connected to any other squares, which means we get rid of those. This 2 is in a group with another square, but since the only other square it can be connected to is this one, that solves that problem. The other thing we find out here is that we can't really add to this group, right? So the one below this can't be real, and the one to the right of this can't be real either. So we get rid of those. This group of 4 is pretty self-explanatory. So you got the 4, the one above it, the one below it, and the one to the left of it. So that's our group of 4. We can't have any squares added to that group because that would change the number. So this one can't be real, and this one can't be real. And then that means this group of 2 just needs to be marked, and we're good to go. So I'm only going to do one more puzzle here for you guys because this pretty much marks the end of the tutorial section of the game, but as you can see from the fact that this puzzle has way more squares in it than the previous ones did, and way less information on it than some of the previous ones did, that it really gets into a bit of a puzzle mechanic where you have to use the limited amount of information presented to you to derive what the solution to the puzzle is. And I have been able to confirm that the intent of the game is that you should be able to logically figure out all of these puzzles without any trial and error. And so I will do this one here just to prove that it can be done, and then you'll hopefully have the tools you need to be able to go on and solve the rest of the puzzles for yourself, should you choose to do so. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at the easy pickings on this level. So we've got this 1, which means that these ones around it can't be legitimate squares. We've got this 1, which similarly can't have legitimate squares around it. Now we've got this column here, which can only have 1 in the first half of it, and since this 2 is there, that has to be the 1. So these can go away. And then the bottom half of this column has 3 in it, so we know that's 1, 2, 3. And this 2 and this 7 can't be connected because that would screw up each other's numbers, so that can't be a legit square, which also means that this 2 has to be the one next to it to complete its little group of 2. And since this top of this column can only have 1, that means these other 2 squares are fake, so we'll get rid of those. Let's see what else. Down here in the lower left, this 3 has to be at least connected to this one, although I'm not sure where it goes from there just yet. Let's see what else we can see. So the second half of this row can only have 1 in it, and since we've already got this marked, these 2 can't be real. This 4 up here seems pretty obvious, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it can't be connected to anything else, so that can't be real. And let's see what else we can do. Okay, so this row, the first half of it only has 1, and we've already marked that, so this one can't be real. And then, let's see, the bottom half of this column only has 1 in it. I don't think we can actually derive that just yet. Okay, so here, the 7 has to at least be this one, and probably the one next to it as well, which is already marked. And what that tells us is that the second half of this row, which has 2, so this third one can't be part of the chain, which means the chain of 7 would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Can't be 7. This can't be the 7th bit because that would connect it to this other group, so that can't be real, which means the chain of the group of 7 must be made up of these. And then what that means is the group of 3 actually has to be these 3, and then we eliminate this one. And there you have it. So hopefully that's given you enough of an idea of what this game is all about to determine whether or not you'd be interested in playing it for yourself. I believe it's selling for about $3 on Steam, so it's not a huge investment, and I think it's kind of clever. I was a little disappointed that it took me as long as it did to figure out the whole row and column splitting mechanic, and especially the idea that like the active boxes in the pattern can't touch each other on when the row or column is split in half. Like that was like kind of poorly communicated by the game, and it was a little bit frustrating trying to figure all that out. But once I got my head wrapped around it and kind of replayed through these first few levels enough times that I figured out what the actual mechanic was, I'm actually kind of into it, and I'm definitely planning to play through the rest of these levels at some point. But for now, I think that's pretty much going to do it for this video. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to hit the like button, and if you'd like to see more content from me in the future, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will see you all next time.